Playing linebacker isn't an easy task. To play linebacker, you got to be an extraordinary athlete with great football intelligence, great instincts, great intuition. And probably the biggest part of that is your ability to read your keys as a linebacker, the ability to make decisions quickly, to diagnose the offense's intent effectively, efficiently, and correctly. Allows a linebacker to really play sideline to sideline, from quarterback to end zone, really be a full field player. So it's very important as a linebacker that we really are an extraordinary player. And I believe each of you is extraordinary. I was taught a long time ago that it's easy to be ordinary, it takes courage to excel, and we must excel. And I don't think anybody watching this video is ordinary. You're all extraordinary, or you wouldn't be watching this today. Often in coaching, I've taught you about eyes, hands, and feet. And those are very important ingredients in everything we do as a linebacker. Today we're going to talk about eyes, because everything else tracks off your eyes. They really are the cornerstone of what we do as a linebacker. And every elite player is that their ability to use their eyes is what separates you. As you continue to climb and continue to try to maximize your talents, it's so important that you're able to use your eyes effectively. And it's how you recruit those visual resources that's going to determine how effective you are in reading your keys. Today, I'd like to share with you also some ideas about science-based keys. I'm not just going to tell you, okay, here's how you read a play. Every coach in your life is giving you that coach speak. Read the triangle. What's that mean, coach? Why? I think it's very important as a player to play confidently, to play fast. You need to understand the why, not just the how, not just the what, but the why. If you understand the why, you're going to play a lot faster. You're going to play a lot better. So I'm going to share with you the science base behind the keys we're talking about. So today we're really going to focus on eyes in this meeting, and we're going to make sure that you come away with a strong understanding of why we use the keys that we do, so we can move from this point forward and maximize your abilities here as a linebacker. It's important that you understand that you can change how you look at things, right? Through our eyes, we're getting the data from the image. And there's flexibility in how you allocate the resources you have visually. In other words, what can you see? And how do I use my eyes? You have flexibility. We'll talk a little bit about how you can focus and how you can utilize all your visual resources that you have. So there's data coming in through your eyes. There's image data that we're looking at. And what we're trying to do is isolate the most telling image that we can. How do we isolate the data that's most important to us that's coming through our eyes? It's important to understand that from the fastest that something moves to zero movement at all, to a fixed object, our attention can be focused on 1 to 8 objects. It's really fast and moving fast. We can look at one thing, and we can track one thing effectively, efficiently, and accurately. If it's not moving at all, if everything is just set in place, we can look, we can track, we can gain image data from up to 8 objects. So depending on the number we look at and how many things we're trying to focus, we can flexibly allocate, our vision and our resources that we have to do that. The first component that affects our ability to gather that image data is the speed. The faster the objects are moving, the fewer objects we can focus on. So again, if it's moving at the fastest rate that we can track visually, we're only going to be able to track one object. When you go and raise yourself to looking at 2 objects, the speed has got to drop 30% to be able to effectively continue to focus and draw attention to those objects, to be able to track those objects. Drops 30%. When you go to looking at 3 objects from 2, it drops another 30%. So if the first object you could track at 100 miles an hour, By the time you got to 3 objects, that speed would have to be cut to 50 miles an hour. And if you go from 3 to 4 objects, it drops another 33%. So by the time you go from 1 object to trying to track 4 objects, the speed has dropped by almost 85%. That's an amazing drop. So the number of objects that we try and track, how many objects that I'm going to teach you to track as a linebacker, has to be understood and has to be fit into those parameters. If I say, if it's everything's moving fast in a play, let's say it's fly sweep and everything's moving fast, and I say I want you to look at these 4 objects, it's not going to happen because I'm going to have to, I can only track at 85% of the maximum speed that I'm able to track. So to allocate the visual resources I have to understand the speed and then coach you, and we have to discern the amount of objects that we can realistically watch at the speed that that play may be run at. And that goes to the next point that's very important, is we talk often, I talk to you a lot about don't let them steal your eyes. Don't let the play steal your eyes. Don't let your eyes be stolen. And that's great coach speak too, but it's reality. Because here's what happens, as I said, as we're watching a play, let's say we're doing nothing more than looking at the back and say we're going to cue that back. That through our film study, we understand that the first step of the back is going to track us to the ball. Let's say we determined that. Simple as that. Well, suddenly there's a wide receiver that comes across at near maximum speed on a fly sweep track. If we want to track him and he's at close to our maximum speed, we know he's going to draw near 100% of our visual resources. So that movement will literally steal our eyes. In a minute, I'll talk to you about spacing and how that affects our ability to limit our eyes being stolen and how we can counter that. But our eyes will be stolen, both by speed and space, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I think it's so important to understand that the speed of the objects that are moving, the things we're trying to track, and we'll talk about those items here in a minute, is very, very important. Very important. The third point I'd like to make is about spacing, because spacing is very, very important. So we know, first of all, is our allocation of resources. How do we use all the resources that our eyes have? All the ability that we have to see what we need to see to determine the play, determine the intent of the offense. Now, we understood in speed, the higher the speed, the greater the speed, the fewer objects that we could track. And we studied and we learned that 85, if we go up to 4 objects, we're trying to track 4 objects, the speed and our ability to track effectively those objects drops by 85%. Well, spacing is very similar. It runs parallel. The closer objects are together, the fewer objects we can track. So the further apart objects are, the more we can attract, the more we can track because of distractions. Objects that are farther apart, we have a coarser focus on those objects, a coarser focus. The closer they're together, we have a finer focus, and that's why we can't see as many objects from being closer. We spread them out. Now we have a coarser focus on those things. And distractions become less of a factor the greater the spacing. Let me give you a quick example. Let's say I'm a safety, and I need to see in my periphery number 1 strong and number 1 weak, and I want to get, within that read, I want to get some indication of the intention of the quarterback. I know that from distance, I can look at more objects, but I also know that distractions are less a factor when there's greater spacing. So think about number 1 strong, number 1 weak, and the quarterback. They're all separate. So any movement that's happening between those that might distract me are less likely to do so because of the distance. That's why I can effectively see and maintain leverage on one strong, one weak in my periphery and still look and see the intent of the quarterback, and everything else, the other routes, other movements, don't have to be a distraction. There's another thing that's important, and it may be coach speak at times. We talked about stealing our eyes, right? That actually happens. That something moving fast, if it gains our attention, it can suck all of our visual resources to that object. The same thing can happen when targets scatter. If I'm looking at a cluster of targets, let's say 3 or 4 objects, if they move in unison or they're not moving real fast, it's easy to maintain my focus. But if those targets scatter in different directions, then the accuracy is lost. So let me give you an example again. Let's say we're tracking 4 objects, and those 4 players are in our vision. We've allocated an equal amount of our resources to each one of those objects. Now they scatter, and we're able to continually keep our focus on 3 of those objects, but that 4th object scatters and we lose focus. We've allocated all our resources to maintain a good focus on those 3 objects. What happens with that 4th object when we lose the ability to track? Guess what? Your mind guesses. And when it guesses, it only guesses at a 20% accuracy rate. So sometimes when I'm coaching you and we look at the play and I say, what are you looking at? And you look back and you say, wow, I don't know, coach. Guess what? You're probably right. Because as you were tracking, maybe that object left the sector that you were able to draw resources to. And so your mind automatically guesses. So maybe you missed a puller. Maybe you missed the curl route. Because your mind is only going to be able to guess the track of that 4th target with 20% accuracy. So quickly, we've looked at how do we bring in resources, all those visual factors, how do we gain focus, what effect does speed have on our ability to utilize our visual resources, and then spacing and how that affects those visual resources and how we're able to track. We looked at how our eyes can be stolen because of speed and how if we begin to track a target and it leaves our focal point, it leaves the screen, so to speak, of our vision, that our mind may guess about where it went and what it's doing, and only at a 20% accuracy. So let's go now and really move back to those keys we started with. So hopefully you feel a little bit more confident that there's an understanding of the resources of your eyes and how we're going to use those. And another time we'll look more closely at each of those components in your eyes and how we can train those components. But today we really want to understand why we look at what we look at as we try to diagnose each play. All right? So first we know pre-snap. We come to the line of scrimmage. And this is really about our preparation, isn't it? It's about what you do with your film study. It's about how you implement the use of scouting reports, how you use the video, how you use all the different presentation platforms that we work on a daily and a weekly basis as we move towards game day. So it's taking that preparation and putting it on the field. That's really what we're looking at pre-snap. So we obviously need to look at how are the personnel, who's in the game? Is there a personnel cue? How are they deployed? You know, is the tight end strong or weak? Is it trips into the boundary? The deployment of the personnel can tell us a lot and may tell us where and how to use those flexible visual resources that we have. You know, are they trying to exploit us in some way with the use of formation? And understanding that. That's where that football intelligence, that's where correlation and causation come into effect in understanding what the opponent's trying to do with formation. Do they integrate motion or movement or a stem into it? Does that tell us something? Does motion strong or weak? Does motion, tight to spread? Does motion from on the LOS to off the LOS? Does a stem from off to on? Do those things tell us where we should be allocating our visual resources? And then there are other situational cues, field zone, down and distance, score, all those things that we look at. And those things should all be giving us feedback. And remember, we've got flexibility in how we allocate our visual resources. So we want to know how best to use those. And all those pre-snap indicators help us understand how best to allocate our visual resources. And all those things lead us then to understanding what the offensive's mode of attack is. Okay, now, what's the first dynamic key? The game is changed a lot over the years. And even the time that you guys have been playing, it's changed a lot. So we need to really look at what's the first dynamic key. And we know that dynamic means changing, moving, malleable, all those things. So the first key that is dynamic, that changes, and it can change. And we have to allocate some of those visual resources to the ball. But now some of those pre-snap reads, some of those pre-snap indicators may help us understand how best and the possibilities of what may happen with the ball pre-snap. So now we can be flexible. Maybe not as much of those resources need to be dedicated to the ball, and they need to be dedicated somewhere else. But right now, the first dynamic key we want to look at is the ball. And these are the things that are really, really important to us. What's the ball's relationship to the line of scrimmage? Is it on or off the line of scrimmage? How is it related in the formation? Are they under center or are they in the shotgun formation? And where are the other personnel related to the ball? Who comes in proximity to the ball? Are they spread? Are they farther apart? Does a running back that leaves proximity to the ball indicate something's going to happen? The quarterback under center or in shotgun, does that indicate to us the intent of the offense? Does the quarterback and how he leaves his alignment, all those things are important. So understanding initially the ball's relationship to the line of scrimmage, the formation and the location of the ball within that formation, and the personnel in relationship to the ball, all can be strong indicators of what's going to happen offensively and how they're going to try and attack. What's their mode of attack going to be? The first part of the ball, after those first things of where's the ball located, is engagement. This is probably the most important thing as a linebacker because it's going to tell us a lot about the intent of the offense. If the ball resides close proximity to a ball carrier or receiver, is there potential for exchange? So that you might have, as here in this drawing, where the question mark here, guys, is what is the intent? Is he going to engage? So right now, we're going to put our resources right now on the ball and the intent of that running back, the question mark, to engage the ball. Knowing that engagement or lack of engagement is going to tell us a lot about the intent, right? So what happens if that running back steps up the block, that yellow line here? If he takes that track and steps in front of the quarterback, is the intent, do you think, to run the ball or is the intent to throw the ball? If he steps up in his position, he does not engage the ball. The intent at that point is not to run the ball, but more likely to throw the ball. So that opportunity, where on the white line, if he follows a track that can be engaged by the quarterback, now we know there's the possibility of a run. And we'll talk about in a minute what those possibilities are, but just the proximity of that ball carrier. Now, it might be a a receiver coming in a fly sweep motion, right, that might be in proximity. There might be a key for us that the back steps up to block. We know now that he may not engage, but there was motion, and we need to check that motion to understand if that receiver is going to engage. We also know that that running back could track back towards the quarterback, and there could be a shovel. So all that's going to tell us the intent of the quarterback. If that intended person is not in a position, not in a proximity with the ball, if he moves out of proximity with the ball, then we know the opportunity is greatest for the ball to be thrown. Okay? Everybody understand that? Okay, the second component is the exit lane of the ball. As the ball is transferred from the center to the quarterback, whether it's under center in a T or in shotgun, or even if it's wildcat, as the ball leaves the point from the center and is transferred, what is the intent? That's going to tell us a lot about the intent. Even if you go back and look at single wing football, the transfer of the ball from the center to one of the backs told us a lot about the intent of the offense. What's the design of the offense? That holds true today just as much as it did at that time. If you go all the way back to Sammy Baugh, Texas Christian, back in the day, how the ball was transferred from the center to the quarterback, they're running spread back then, told the players a lot about the offense's design. So here, if I look at this diagram I have here on the board, it's easier to really give you examples. So if the ball leaves the center and is transferred to the quarterback here that has a question mark, if he turns away from the back, his exit lane is he pivots and he turns his shoulders to receiver off to our left, which indicates he could be throwing, could be an RSO, right? A run screen option, and he's decided to throw the screen. That's going to tell us a lot. So now we know as a linebacker where we need to go and what our pursuit track is going to be. But we've got to allocate our resources, right? So that when that ball leaves the center and goes to the quarterback, that exit lane of the ball, he turns his shoulders and his back is, now the ball is exited opposite the back, indicates a good chance if formation, down in distance, field position, all those things confirm ahead of time, the likelihood that there could be an RSO, then that very well could happen. If the ball comes off the line of scrimmage, he drops. It doesn't matter whether it's a 1, 3, 5, 7 off quarterback position or out of the gun. Ball comes off the line of scrimmage, tells us a lot, doesn't it? So again, each week as we look at our opponent, we want to look at the exit lane of the ball. Is he off the line when he throws the ball? Is the ball thrown 95% of the time? The ball comes off. If the ball opens opposite the back, the ball exits opposite the back, is it 95% screen? If the ball engages the back, is in yellow here, and now we know that design is RPO, we got a chance, and now we know what they like to do, right? Whether they're going to read the first level, they're going to read the second level, or they're going to read the third level. Those people with those responsibilities have a greater likelihood of correctly understanding the intent of the offense's design. The third component is the launch, and that's how is the ball exchanged from one player to another. And again, it doesn't matter if it's single wing or if it's modern spread or it's West Coast offense. It doesn't matter if it's today's Kansas City Chiefs with Mahomes or it's Bart Starr and the Green Bay Packers. The delivery and exchange of the ball from one player to another and how it's done tells us a lot about the intent, correct? And it'll verify. A lot of times the launch and type of launch is really going to help us be a confirming factor. So again, if we see the quarterback, he opens away, and we know that 95% of the time he's going to throw the screen when he opens away from the back, no matter the track of the back, then we know, again, if his shoulders are perpendicular line of scrimmage, if his hips open away, whatever those indicators are that we've confirmed for that week, and we can confirm that that launch is going to put us into play so much quicker. It isn't the bottom line, the impact that we have, making impact plays, being productive as a linebacker. That's our intent. Our ability to get to the football, diagnose the play, get to the football as quickly as possible. The faster we can do that, the more productive we're going to be. And that's my job as a coach, is to help you be the most productive player on the field. The offense has got the quarterback. The defense has got the linebacker. And if you're going to assume the leadership role that I need you to assume, then we need to be able to diagnose plays quickly. And one of those ways is with the launch. We talked about the ball off the line. We got a good chance of pocket pass. Maybe it's 87% pocket pass this week. Now the indicators. We need to work. Now where do we put our visual resources? That now we need a little finer focus. Is it on the shoulder? Did the hips already open? If the hips opened on his drop, and we know the ball is thrown to our right or being thrown weak on a right-hand quarterback, and within his drop he opened the hips, and we know the ball is going weak, doesn't that allow us to adjust our drops? Doesn't allow us, if we're working in some kind of bracket or match concept, to be where we need to be a little bit more quickly? Maybe the difference between a takeaway and a not, between a defended pass and not, and maybe a defensive score. If the quarterback stays square and his toes are ahead, does that tell us he's looking to shovel the ball? And if so, again, that may put us in position to make a play more quickly. We may anticipate the blocker coming, be able to go. The other component, what if it is RPO and it's read option or option, whether it's veer or standard option? What are we looking at? Where our eyes go? Again, how do we allocate the visual resources we have? I need to teach that to you. Now, many of you know that we want to read the backside hip of the running back. If I say to you, what are you reading on this read zone? And you say, I'm looking at the mesh. Wrong. Because now you got an opportunity to be fooled. Because that ball is going to be a good quarterback's going to extend his arms. He's going to seat the ball in the pocket of the back every single time. And if they ride effectively, you're going to be drawn into that. That's going to take you away from where you want to be. We're going to talk about some additional techniques in a minute that are affected about where your eyes are at in the read zone. If you read the backside hip, you know if that ball shows on a backside hip, the quarterback has pulled the ball. If the ball doesn't show, then we have a great chance at that ball. Now our chances of understanding the play and the intent of the offense is exponential. It's been magnified time after time after time. The second dynamic key now is the action of the play. What's the action of the play? You know, we've worked through this often in practice, and action is the architecture of the play. So if you remember in architecture, the action is the art. That's how it's built. That's what it looks like. That's the design of the play. Isn't the offensive coordinator? He's an architect, right? Often referred to that in the press. The offensive coordinator is the architect of the number one offense in the league, right? Same thing's true here. We're trying to understand the architecture of the play, the design of the play. And this includes the direction and angle of running backs, quarterbacks, receivers, all as they track. Excuse me. Whether they're working in combination or they're separate. And you can, in your mind right now, you can think, so the dynamics of the play is the action. That's the design, right? So read zone, I know the back steps, the quarterback opens, he seats the ball. tells me the design of that play is for read zone, right? We said if the back comes in the same track as a threat to run the ball, but the quarterback opens away and brings the ball into a throwing posture, I now know that action is telling me there's a great chance of RSO, great chance of run screen option. If the ball comes, now the action of the play is such that the back is coming front side in a arcing mode, and there was motion from the line of scrimmage back, so now we've got a guy in a zero alignment or back in a pistol alignment. That architecture is telling me what the potential for that play might be. Maybe the architecture is they're moved to an empty set, and now the back motions either back into the backfield or into a position where he might be a potential screen or pitch player on a speed option. All those things in the action. The fly sweep action, right? We all know the different actions, the different intents of the offense, and we'll go into that a little bit more. So action is the next component. So we've talked about two places that our resources need to be utilized, our visual resources. First is with the ball. We talked about three different components of the ball. And then the second is the action. So we have two focal points right now. And we know that ever increasingly, the number of focal points that we try and give resources to visually, the less speed can be allocated, but the greater space. Now, in these first two, we know the ball and action are going to be in close proximity. So we know from the science, the closer the objects are together, the fewer that we can focus on. So right now we have the ball, and it may be a back or receiver or another player in the action that's going to indicate to us, again, what the architect, what the design, what did the architect have in mind for this play? What did the offensive coordinator have in mind for this play? A lot of that can be gained from the action. So we've allocated some resources now, one to the ball and second to action. Okay, what type of actions? I offered a couple just a second ago, but here's the things we're going to see. Now, every week it changes, right? There's different types of systems. Everybody's concerned, maybe I'm playing a true option team this week. Next week, I've got a West Coast team. Okay, we're seeing so much pass. I've got a team that's playing tempo, but there are only these 5, I really believe, different actions that we're going to see. And we're going to put things into these holes, into these cups, onto these shelves. We're going to separate their offense into one of these 5 actions each week. And we know when we get this action, what it is telling us. What is the intent? What is the design of the architect? The first is some pass, run or pass, and it's direct. So the action is attacking the line of scrimmage. The pass, the ball is off the line and there's a block. It's very direct. There's no smoke and mirrors, and it's a very direct action. And it's that action we can read very quickly. So with our ball key and our action key with direct action, we should be able to take our balance step, determine what the offense is doing, run or pass very quickly, and then either execute our pass or run responsibilities and be in a great tack to get that done effectively. And again, generate some production for our defense. And ultimately get our offense back on the field. The second is mixed direction, run or pass. Within that action, there's conflict, correct? We're not sure where the ball might be going. If it's a 2-back set, one goes one way, one goes the other way. The quarterback reverses out. The running backs go to the left, the quarterback reverses to the right, and there's potential for a boot. Is that misdirection? Counter. He steps opposite the direction. Everything else is telling us the ball is going to the left, but we get a misdirection, a conflict read that tells us that the ball could go back the other way. So we can have direct action and misdirection. Excuse me. The third is an overload. They're trying to gain a numbers advantage at the point of attack. What creates that? Could be a pull. It could be a lead back. It could be a crack. But they're trying to create a numbers advantage at the point of attack in the run game. So they're going to relocate a gap and move the gap to a different spot by a pull. In the passing game, they're going to try and overload. They might do that by constricting the formation and overloading protection, or they may spread the formation and overload your coverage. But in some way, the offense, the intent, the architect, the offensive coordinator's design is to overload the defense, to gain a numbers advantage at the point of attack. The fourth action is option. Could be it's on the field. They're going to determine how the play continues to unfold in reaction to what happens with the defense. The control of the play, the design and the architecture of the play was done by the architect. But we're going to empower a decision maker on the field to allow that play to have a life of its own, to allow them to empower, to react to the situation. RPO, run pass option, RSO, run screen option, traditional options, etc., etc., etc. Where the empowerment is on the field, the architect has trained that decision maker on the field to carry out the design of that play and the intent of that play. And then the fifth is what I call disguise, right? You can have a draw. They want to make it look like pass and then run the ball. They want to make it look like a down the field pass, allow the defense to cover the field and to be spread across and then throw the screen. They might want to give you play action. They want to make it look like run and disguise it and throw the football. Maybe some type of magic play, reverse, double pass, Statue of Liberty, any of those things. So each offense, I believe, all the different architects, all the different offensive coordinators, all of their designs can be put in these five basic categories. Okay, the third dynamic key is scheme. So we've allocated visual resources to the ball and to action. And within those, then, we'll have to adjust those resources. We said it's dynamic, it's ever-changing. We have flexibility to how those resources are allocated. Now we're going to add that third dynamic key. And again, we know when we add a third key, a third focal point, we're going to be down to 50% speed. So again, but scheme is separated, gives us spacing from the other two attributes that we're trying to track, the other two objects that we're tracking. So we know by spacing, the greater the spacing, the more objects we can track. So scheme is separated from ball and action. There's spacing. So now we know that not only can we see more objects, but we also know that those first two are in close proximity, so it's going to be a very fine focus. The scheme is separated, and the more distance they're apart, the more coarse that our attention is, the more coarse the focus is on the objects. So now we're going to be able to see a few more. So we're going to be able to see those objects in the box, those 5 people in the box, or a portion of the box that our indicators earlier told us was we should allocate. So it may be an uncovered lineman. It may be the weak side guard and tackle. It may be the guards. It may be the center and the guard. It may be the 5. But we're going to be able to allocate accordingly and appropriately the resources because there's separation between those two early keys of the ball and the action. Those are close together. And so we know that they're going to use a good portion of our resources. But we know we still can be at 50% of the maximum speed, which the initial part of the play generally is within that range, and get a look at our scheme. So that's really where we're allocating those 3. And remember, that 4th component takes the speed down to 85%, 83% to be exact, correct? So we know that our allocation, we don't have our resources are going to be spread. And we know that if we try and go to that 4th object, that 4th piece of the puzzle, there's a good chance that we're going to lose focus on that, and then our mind is going to guess. And if it guesses where that 4th component is, it's only 20% complete. Now, let me give you a little hint. One of the things we talk about all the time, we're talking about scheme. We know we got very fine focus on ball and action. How do we allocate the right amount of resources to scheme at the beginning of the play? We've had our pre-snap reads. We're getting our ball and action reads. We know they're going to use up a large portion of our visual resources. Well, here's a secret for you. Here's a tip. Just like the picture you see on the screen, right here on the board, there's an emergency alert. Sometimes it's a weather report on the TV. So you're watching TV, you see a fire. You know it's a fire. You know that it's there, but you're not quite sure what it is. So you see that alert at the bottom of the screen. So first of all, it flashes on the screen, a blazing building. You know there's a fire. And then you see at the bottom, they've got an alert. And now you can take your visual resources where it's focused on the fire. You can maintain a portion of resources so you can follow the flames. But now you're going to take some of those resources and let them drop so you can see what's happening. And now you know it's an abandoned convent that's on fire. And now the emotion of knowing, are there nuns in that fire? Are there individuals that are in danger now? And we only knew that, can only draw attention to that because how we allocated our resources. So we're always watching ball and action with a lot of our resources allocated. We have enough of those resources. And again, because of the spacing, it's at the bottom of the screen. We know it's happening, but we can allow it to be a coarser focus. And all we have to know is it exists. And as soon as it comes into play, we can allocate more resources to it and see that it's an abandoned convent, or that it's a pull play, or that it's high hat. So scheme is really important to us, confirming what we've seen in pre-snap, the ball, and in action. So in scheme, I've also looked at 5 components of scheme. I really think we can separate what happens in the scheme into 5 areas. Again, if we allocate these any greater, creating more diversity to the scheme, we're not going to be able to make the determination quickly of where we need now to place our visual resources. Everything leads from one to the other. It's no different than the computer here on the desk, right? It's on-off switches. It's if-then statements. If this happens, and then this happens. Our eyes are the same way. What we want to program is if this happens, if the ball takes this exit lane and the action, the back moves in this direction, then what has the offensive line done? And the offensive line can move in these 5 places. I would also say scheme happens with the backs. It happens with receivers. It's anybody that's involved in that scheme. So first of all, we have We can have front side blocking, right? Zone scheme, front side. So the blocking, we're going to block our front side gaps. Very simple. Very direct, correct? We can block backside, right? And that could be any kind of gap scheme in today's vernacular, but we got front side scheme, we're blocking backside. Very easy. Did the line move front side or backside from the ball, or the intent of the back, or from formation, or field, or boundary, or strong or weak, open or closed, any of those types of things. The third is a displaced gap. Coach, what's a displaced gap? That's a gap that moves. It's not where it's supposed to be. It leaves its home alignment. It gets displaced. So now we see the action, correct? The ball doesn't engage the back. The back steps away from the ball. Great chance for pass, we said, right? But we see in scheme that we get alert, and our focus goes to that alert, and we see that there's a puller, which indicating us now that there's a guard tackle pull, or a guard Y pull, or a guard H pull. We know now there's a great chance for counter. There might be a chance for boot opposite. But that displaced gap tells us a lot. But as linebackers, the primary thing it tells us is we've got to move with that gap. Because now their intent, the architecture of the play, the design of the play is to gain a numbers advantage at the point of attack. And the only way that we're going to defend that is to get our linebacker to move with that gap. Now, there are some schemes where we may move a defensive lineman. We may lower a second or a third level defender, defensive back, to accommodate that displaced gap. But we have to have something built into our scheme that accommodates for that displaced gap. And that's going to tell us a lot how to play and what we need to do with our eyes. As soon as we see that guard tackle pull, now we know, is it counter or is it boot? And now our eyes can go accordingly. The fourth component, the fourth diverse scheme of attack, is some type of perimeter scheme. Could be crack, correct? It might be even a smoke play where we're going to get the stalk and then a release. It could be, as I said, crack. It might be a perimeter blocker leaving the line of scrimmage and going into position, into proximity with the ball, and can be a threat there. Could be somebody motioning in and now might be a lead blocker in the inside and a lead play. Correct? So it might be the guy on the edge of the box. It might be a bunch alignment. And how does that bunch, as the play matures, how does that bunch blossom? What do we need to do, right? So maybe that bunch is created by motion. And now we know that our attention needs to go to that bunch, because whatever happens to the inside member of that bunch might give us a good indication of the intent and the design of the play. And then the fifth is pass protection. Pass protection can tell us a lot. Obviously, high hat. Where's the back in proximity? How the linemen turn, how they set, how their hands are placed, what's their posture like. All those things indicate protection. Where they step. Is it express protection where they all turn and run down a line of scrimmage? That's not a run. That's not a run block. That's a pass protection. So again, how I allocate my eyes, how I allocate our visual resources is going to tell us a lot about the potential of this play. So again, it might be play action where it's a run block, but there may be something in the scheme that separates how we block play action. You know, there's a team that we played against this last year that literally only time they pulled was play action, because they know that linebackers are taught, as we talked about, to move with that displaced gap. So they felt like if they displaced the gap, that would open up, and that opened up a pocket for them to throw into. So we have to understand what is their pass protection, what does the scheme look like, and how do we allocate our resources, our visual resources, when we see that pass protection. That's something we need to look at every single week. So you can see right now, as we go through film study, we have a checklist of things we need to look at. We need to look pre-snap. What are the pre-snap indicators that are going to help us in the allocation of our eyes? What are the ball indicators that are going to help us with the allocation of our eyes? What are the action indicators that help us with the allocation of our eyes? What are the scheme indicators that help us with the allocation of our eyes? Oh, this is a little technique I'd like us to talk about before we leave today. I think it's very important because one of the things we do as coaches is sometimes in our coach speak we put you as a player, we put the linebacker into conflict. Well, you got to play here like the two green lines, right? We're going to say if they do this, you got to play run. If they do this, you got to play pass. Well, we're asking you to play run and pass. Now, there's so much that we do with man coverages, with match coverages, with bracket coverages, with dropping defenders into different areas of responsibility, dropping defensive backs from the third level into the box. There's a lot we can do with scheme so that there isn't conflict. But with so much pass today in modern football, we've got to be able to defend the pass. Whether it's RPO, play action, drop back, sprint out, boot, whatever it is. So I think it's very important. So one of the techniques I like to teach is the sniper technique. So if I do have a linebacker that has an inside gap responsibility, and it may be the C gap, maybe there's ways that we can jab a D lineman inside, give us the C gap, which gives us a little bit better leverage. We can use our scheme to help us. But if our linebacker is in conflict where he has some type of run responsibility, thus the green line here from the running back, where he has some kind of a pass responsibility, he's in a hole or he has curl, or he's bracketing, he's got the inside and under release. So he has to be in that hole. If he has both, then I'm going to teach my linebacker a sniper technique. I'm going to teach you to minimize that conflict. I don't want you stressed. When you get stressed, you're not going to play fast. You're not going to be confident. It's going to be unknown. So we're going to take that away, and again, we're going to go back and make it on switches. We're going to make it if-then statement out of it. So we're aligned at 5 to 6. We're linebackers that we want to run. We're going to be fast with speed, getting over the top. We're going to be able to track everything, and we're going to make plays boundary to boundary, ball to end zone. So I want you to hang right now. On the snap of the ball, you'll take your balanced step. The line of scrimmage, often they're going to block the line of scrimmage. And I haven't here indicated exactly what the indication here is going to be as far as, are they blocking an over front or under front or a bare front or 30 front? We can get that at a later time. The fundamental is they block the line of scrimmage, and the quarterback's going to read the second level. You, the linebacker, who has this dual read, who they're trying to stress, who they're trying to put in conflict. So we're going to take that balanced step, but our alignment, we know the conflict ahead of time with our positioning in this defense because of the down and this because of other indicators, field zone, score, those kind of things. So I'm going to align in that location, and I'm going to hang in that location. What does a sniper do? A sniper shoots from distance, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to shoot from distance. Normally, we get a strong run read. We're going to hit it downhill, over the top, downhill, into the LOS. Now what we're going to do is we're going to shoot from distance. So when that quarterback engages the back, I've taken a balanced step. So my first step is no different than when I have a direct, aggressive run read, and I'm playing run, and there's no conflict, no stress, and I know I have a gap responsibility or other run responsibility within the scheme. Here there's potential for stress. I'm going to relieve the conflict because I'm going to line in that soft spot. I'm going to line in that hole in the defense. I'm going to line in the heart of that pass responsibility. And I'm going to take that balance step. Now I'm going to play visual chicken with the quarterback. I am going to stare at that mesh point. I'm going to stare at him. I'm going to see the ball. Are his arms extended? Are they short armed? So I have an idea as quickly as possible, run past off of how he engages. What is the intent of the quarterback? If I can get an idea through film work, that's going to help me. Then I'm going to read the back hip to confirm whether that ball was given or pulled. If it is given, at that point, I'm going to stick my foot in the ground. I'm going to run downhill. I'm going to put the core of my body and the core of his body. I'm going to go to that near hip, and I'm going to make a great tackle. If the ball is pulled and it's passed, I'm sitting where I need to be right now. Now, I can use my visual resources at that point to find the receiver, make sure I don't allow him to run past me, allow that he hasn't run some type of option cut off of me. It's going to put me in a proper relationship with that receiver because I know the intent of the ball now. But I am confident initially that I'm going to align where that quick shot spot is. I'm going to align. And now my visual, all my resources are going to those two objects, the back and the ball, that are close proximity that I can read fast, and they're close together. I know I can allocate my resources there. And I have very fine focus, so I will not make a mistake. Now, if I get indication that it's ball's given, I'm downhill. I fire from distance. If it's not, I sit at home and I'm going to play the RPO or the play action pass. This ends our discussion today. I really hope that this has helped you better understand the use of our eyes as linebackers. We've talked everything from the science, how we can allocate our visual resources, the effect of speed and space on those allocations. We've talked about how we can use our keys, ball, action, and scheme, to determine the intent. What is the design of the architect? What is the design of the offensive coordinator? What is his intent? And then we're going to look, has he empowered a decision maker on the field, such as the quarterback, to allow the design of the play to be live, to be hot, to be ever-changing? If he has, then we have to allocate our resources properly to post-snap reads, post-snap keys that give us a confirmation of the intent of the play. Because now that, just as that design, just as that coordinator, just as that architect has empowered that quarterback to make on-field decisions, I have to empower you to make on-field decisions. Our design, our architecture, and the empowerment and the flexibility of our system has to match or exceed that of the architect and the design of that offensive play. I really appreciate your great attention today and look forward to you making a lot of great plays. Have a great night.